We're just waiting for Vidisha to join in. Hi, Shrad. Hi,
Hi,
Vidisha.
Anu.
It's so wonderful to see you here.
Can you hear me clearly?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, it's so wonderful to have you here. And well, we're having tea together, and
Yes, we are.
it's 5 o'clock, and you know how much I love tea. So thanks for joining in. At least we're able to have tea virtually, even if not in person.
Yes, yes. The
I
blessings of technology.
Yeah, that's true. And I hope everybody else is also ready with their cup of tea because it's tea at 5 o'clock. Okay, so just at the outset, I just wanted to say that, you know, I might be moving around a little because I have my two dogs and they're running around and it's quite warm outside and I didn't want to do the session sitting inside. So just bear with me. But I'm going to introduce myself to everyone. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining in. This is Anu, and I'm the founder of the Swadharani initiative. And through that, we are very actively and passionately trying to build awareness about living sustainably, living in a manner which is inclusive and loving of all life, not just humans, but all life around. And at the same time, I'm also running an organization called Swadharani Conscious Living, through which we are helping people reduce their impact on the environment through alternatives, which are non-toxic, which are plant-based and safe for everyone. The pets, waterways, etc., etc. And also, these are alternatives to single-use plastic. All right, so I have Vidisha with me, and I think so many of us here already know Vidisha. So Vidisha runs the Conscious Life Academy. She is a life coach, a Helio Life teacher, and she also runs her own podcast, which is hugely successful. It's called the Monday Musings, and she's also available on Think Right Me, which is an app for anyone who wants to live consciously. And I think she's a sound healer and one of the registered sound healers and practitioners on Think Right Me. So, Vidisha, could you talk a little more about what you do? And I'm so excited to have you here today as a friend and also as a person who's living consciously.
Thank you so much, Anu, for that beautiful introduction. You know, when you say it like that, I feel like I'm listening, you know, about somebody else, but it's so beautiful to hear it from you. So thank you so much. And I'm really happy to be here. I've looked forward to this day. And I think at the outset, I want to congratulate you for the kind of work you're doing, Anu. This is phenomenal. You bring a change not only to your own life, you're actually bringing a change on this planet. And I just want to take this moment to pause and acknowledge that, appreciate that. Kudos to you for your guts and whatever journey you've traveled. I've traveled some of it with you, but it's been absolutely phenomenal. So I think it's apt that we take a breather and just acknowledge the journey that you have traveled so beautifully.
Yeah, it's been a beautiful journey and it's unfolded on its own. And I think a part of our conversation today would be, you know, organically we tend to gravitate towards a certain lifestyle. So I think that's going to be a part of our conversation. So Vidisha, you run the Conscious Life Academy, right? And it is about living consciously. So what, according to you, is conscious living? And is there a set definition for it? Or is it relative?
I love that question. It depends entirely on you, on your level of awareness. For that matter, anything in life, right? Everything in life is relative to who I am, what is my level of awareness, and therefore my understanding of it will be based on that. But here's what I can share as my understanding of it, and some of you might resonate with this. So being conscious can be there at different levels. For some people, being conscious means having the freedom to choose the kind of way of living that they want to choose or the options that they want to choose in life. And for them, that is conscious living. And that's a beautiful stage to be. For me, it boils down to being conscious that we all come from one source, and there is a oneness within everything. You know, whether you're talking about a plant in yourself, when you move down to a certain level, there is a degree of oneness. The oxygen that the plant is giving is what you're breathing, and it's becoming a part of your cells and your bloodstream. So literally, this plant is me, and I am made up of the 5 elements. So at one level, there is a oneness. And when we have insights into that oneness and we start living life with that oneness, that to me is conscious living. But of course, conscious living can start at any level. Even if you realize that you want to live the kind of life that you want to live, that's conscious living.
Okay. Okay. So now, so I've been a practitioner of yoga for a few years now, and touch wood, I've been practicing yoga every day. Now, what I've realized in my experience is that, naturally I started to gravitate towards everything that was natural, right? Organically, it happened organically. It wasn't planned that way. So to begin with, in my earlier years, in my 20s, and even until my late 20s, I remember myself being this consumer. I loved to wear, fancy clothes, and fast clothes was a thing with me. I loved to own a lot of shoes and bags and this, that, and everything, and perfumes. But I realized that, as time went and I started getting more and more into yoga, there was a certain change that I could observe, and evidently, I moved more towards natural ingredients or things which were more natural in nature, so to speak. So is there a connectedness? Is this organic, gravitating towards more natural stuff? Is it natural, so to speak? Is that how it is? Or and are they codependent? Can a person live naturally and then look at living consciously? How are they interconnected?
Beautiful questions. So I'd say it's inevitable. It's actually inevitable. If you are truly, honestly, and authentically somebody who lives consciously, you are going to live sustainably, beyond doubt, right? Because if you understand the degree of oneness between you and plants and animals and minerals and everything else, you're going to respect life. You're going to respect the earth, because you acknowledge and you're aware that I'm made up of this water, and I'm made up of this soil, and I'm made up of the same, basically the same elements. So if you like to look at the hardware part of it, if I take today's example, then the hardware is there is a degree of oneness. And if you want to look at the software that lies within each of us, then the same intelligence that created the mountains, the rivers, the soil created us. So whether you believe in God or not, that's not the point. The point is there is some intelligence which governs life, and therefore we are all a part of it. So it's inevitable. However, if somebody is practicing things at a pseudo level, I've seen, unfortunately, I've witnessed spiritual gatherings where plastic is left scattered. Next morning, you see a mountain of rubbish there.
Yeah.
Honestly, I neither see that as conscious nor as sustainable. I don't see, I think we need to walk the talk. Lots of us are very aware today. People talk about living sustainably. People talk about not using use plastic. But whether we are walking the talk or not, that's what makes us somebody who's actually living consciously. And yes, you can cross over from one to the other, because some people, for example, might start off with looking at sustainability, and that's the cause that calls out to them. And sooner or later, you start realizing the oneness of life. Sooner or later, you start realizing that you have a choice at every point in time. And you can make the greater choice or the lesser choice. So it is inevitable if you're authentic and if you're really walking the talk.
Right. So I think everybody has their own journey, and it depends on what resonates with each person at what point. Right. And I think it's a very stark reality that you see, when you aptly pointed out, when you see all these spiritual gatherings, and what you see is plastic, right? and which is completely denatured. It has nothing to do with nature. It has nothing to do with consciousness at all. Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely. And
And sometimes, Anu, it comes, sometimes it comes at the cost of rethinking your branding, rethinking as businesses or as people what you stand for. I'd just like to give a quick example here. You remember the healing center that we had called the Sanctuary. Now, we
yeah.
realized that every time there was a workshop, there was single-use plastic getting generated. Back then, there was no ban on plastic. Plastic was floating around freely, but I began to look at it and question myself, and I said, really? Is this what I want to generate when I'm leading a Heal Your Life workshop, when I'm leading a conscious living workshop, or when one of my trainers is leading it? Is this what I want to generate? And the question was answered with a big no. So we had to rethink. We had to bring in steel plates, and we decided that everybody washes their own plates. Now, this
Right.
meant rethinking how we had placed ourselves, but proudly so, because then you're walking the talk and you're clear, you have integrity then. So each
Right.
one of us had to really think about it. You know, we have to spend time, just a moment, to realize what decision do I want to make. And then you can work things around it. Yeah.
Yeah. And so is conscious living, eh, does it also lead to constantly questioning your own, what you want, say, and a conscious conversation with your own self and a dialogue with your own self? But if it's too much, Vidisha, don't you think that, that's one thing that, for me it happens naturally, but I know there are a lot of people have this question that if I keep questioning myself, if I keep stopping myself from doing something all of the time, then wouldn't I get crazy, and how much can I
Yeah.
self monitor myself? Then what do I do with my instincts? What do I do with my urges, my likes and dislikes, and so on? What
Yeah.
do I do about that?
Yeah, and I think this is a journey I've also personally traveled, and so have you. So I guess it makes sense to share. See, there are a couple of things. One is that one of the central principles by which I live, I learned this long time ago, that if you're taking something from the earth and it can be released into earth safely, it can go back into being earth, perfectly fine. That's the thumb rule I follow. So whether it was picking up the Diwali puja ingredients or it's something else, I ask myself, is this taken from nature? Is this a leaf? Yes, I can use it. I can give it back to earth. Because after all, whatever I'm doing, I'm actually generating it back into the earth, right? So that's a thumb rule that stops me from doing too much overthinking. And it's pretty simple after that, right? So I want to eat food. Can I eat it on a banana leaf? Beautiful. Do I want to pick up that plate which is going to generate toxic stuff? I don't even have to go into the components. What is it made of? No. Does it come from the earth? No. Simple. So that's one of the principles I live by. It makes life easy. I wouldn't say everything can be decided with that, but I'd say about 90% of stuff can be decided with that. And that stops the overthinking to a large extent. Second is, are you working based on knowledge, or are you working on yourself based on insights? Now, if somebody knows that meat is being cut in a very violent way, then the knowledge of it creates a certain response in them. But what if I'm standing there and watching the animal being slaughtered? Now, that's an insight. So when you have had an insight, so don't let that opportunity go by. That insight is going to change you forever. It's going to change the way you think and live. Allow life to
Right.
work on you. You don't have to do the thinking, but don't
Right.
try and join the mainstream. Let that insight emerge and lead you. Listen to that inner voice. You don't need too much knowledge. You don't need to be an expert on biodegradable stuff. You don't need so much of, overload of information. What you need is a connection to your own intelligence, to your own insights, and that tells you everything. The third and the last thing is that you'll find your way. I love perfumes. I still use so much. I have a whole lot of stuff from earlier, and I found replacements for so many of the things that I was passionate about. I find replacements constantly. My taste in clothes has changed. And it's sort of, it is a very wide, I'm not a minimalist, by the way. So let me declare that up
Okay.
front. I love minimalism. I love looking at Pinterest, but it's just not me. I am full of color and vibe and everything, and that's how I am. So to each one their own, and I know you, Anu, you would like things to be very minimalistic, right? And that's you. There's beauty in each one. Being conscious doesn't mean I give up my passions. Being conscious means if I love greenery, then let me have a lot of plants here. If I love color, can I just make sure this color doesn't become toxic stuff for the earth? So
So
there
it's
are
about
ways
that
to work it
convers.
around.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
it's about that just a quick check. How is it impacting, or how the end
Yeah.
life or the birth of this particular product that we're going to consume is
Yes.
impacting the environment or the planet, so to speak. We had one question here, which I think the question was, I can't see it anymore. I don't even know if I can. Oh, I can scroll it down. I think it's from Himan. It is it possible to live in full awareness throughout the day?
Wow, Heyman, I would love that. Well, again, it depends on who you are and how you are living, right? To share about my own journey and that of hundreds of people that I work with, it initially starts off with fleeting glimpses of awareness. And by awareness, I could talk about sustainability, I could talk about any kind of awareness, right? It begins as fleeting glimpses where you suddenly have walked a certain way all your life because everybody is doing it. And then you begin to question, is this what I really want to do? And then those fleeting glimpses, if you are constantly still listening to yourself, they start growing bigger and bigger. And it comes to a point where perhaps you spend more time in the awareness than outside of it. And then it just becomes a way of life.
Right. So, Vidisha, I think now coming to the main topic for today, which is
Yeah.
building habit, right? Now, I think it's the issue and the challenge is agnostic. It doesn't matter whether we're talking about sustainable living or whether we talk about anything else that we want to take up. Now, one of the things, especially with sustainable living, is that people look at it as a lifestyle. But through my own journey, what I've realized is that more than the lifestyle, it's a mindset shift. I need to change how I think, and like what you said, I need to be able to monitor myself and say, make these decisions every day, day in and day out. In my own behavior, I need to bring about a few changes so that I start looking at life as one and whole instead of segregated pieces working independently. Mostly, I need to start looking myself as a human being, which is a part of the system instead of someone outside of the system and not a part of nature. Now, while it may seem that there are quite a few pieces that one needs to look at when it comes to sustainable living, but honestly, it's not that difficult. However, building habit in order to be able to live sustainably is a challenge that I see with a lot of people, and it's my challenge as well. So while I've been trying to live sustainably and go zero waste completely for the past couple of years now, but there are a few things that I slip up on every now and then. I think for me, more than a habit, it is at that point in time, do I have something which I need ready or not? For instance, one of the things that I see that I get to hear a lot is that just a simple bag that you need to carry to to the shop or when you go shopping. A lot of times, it's not a part of our habit to carry it with us or to have something kept in our cars and so on and so forth. So we end up buying plastic bags or just buying maybe another cloth bag and bringing it back home. So this is just one example. Then there are other examples of, let's say, managing kitchen waste or managing your own hygiene products so to speak. So how is it that one can build habit around sustainable living? So you have talked about habits in your morning magic program, which, by the way, everyone, morning magic is the best thing to have happened to any person who's a late riser after really thick curtains to keep the sunshine out. So it's one of the best things to have happened to them. So you talk about habits all the time. Could you also help us with a few tips, tricks, tools, that people can apply in order to live sustainably?
Yes, I love talking about habits. You know that, right? I'm a
Yeah.
big fan of talking about habits and helping people create different kinds of habits. So while the journey of sustainable living or any form of conscious living, sustainability to me is a part of conscious living, a very essential part. So any such thing starts with mindset, right? It starts with having the right mindset, getting awareness, getting insights. Now, after that, what if I just sit with the awareness and the insights and I don't do anything about it? I hear a lot of people say, I was better off when I was ignorant. I wish I didn't know all this. I wish I wasn't so sensitive. And that's where
Yeah,
I
that's a
realized
phase. Yeah.
the missing link is that they have not translated that realization into action, or they've been able to take action once, twice, and they're frustrated with themselves. Now, this is where something like creation of sticky habits really helps. By the way, if anybody is looking for a great book on habits, there's a book called Atomic Habits by James Clear. Pick it up. It's a life changer. Okay. And I learned from him and from several other such sources. So with a habit, what happens is you got to understand the mind and work with the mind as a friend. That's how you form habits. You don't work against the mind. You work with the mind, like you would work with a little child, right? Now, if I want a child to eat nutritious food, is it wise to place a whole lot of chocolates and fizzy drinks in front of the child and then say, exercise your willpower, make your choice? Is that a wise thing to do?
Of course
Not
not.
really, right? So because the human mind works on clues. So if the clue is unconscious, if the clue is a non-sustainable clue, your mind will walk the path of habit. Whatever it is habitual to, it will choose the easiest, most convenient route. So the beginning of, for example, if I apply to sustainable living, and if somebody was to take away that from today's session, quickly after this session, maybe take a look at what is the one change you want to make in yourself. So don't plan for 100 changes at the same time. That's step number one, because that's a sure way to fail. While we say, okay, it's about insights and looking at life differently, but you are a human being who's used to living in a certain way, and for you to create changes and then internalize them to yourself, you need to give yourself time. So decide one small change. Maybe let's take the example you gave of having a bag every time I go out, so that I don't land up buying a plastic bag, or I don't land up buying another cloth bag, right? Or I don't land up not picking what I want. So what can be a clue for me? What can be placed at such a convenient location that every time I need a bag, I have one? So for example, your car. If you're traveling by car or in a two-wheeler, make sure you have at least two bags in your car or your two-wheeler. Because if you're missing one, supposing you forgot to replace one, you at least have the other. And make sure they are foldable. They're really convenient, so that you don't feel embarrassed that you've torn it or whatever, right? The human mind can play so many games. So look at that, being available everywhere. Just place bags somewhere near the entrance. Make sure every time you're stepping out, you just pick one of those bags. For women, I often say, just keep one of those beautiful foldable things in your purses, and you have it any time that you want it. So the placement of it is the habit that you want to create. And it's so simple. It's a tiny change, but it makes a big difference, just like an atom. So with habits, what you do is you create the clue, okay? You make sure you're working on something very small, and you repeat it. Repetition is the key, because that's all a habit is, right? Habits are about doing something again and again till it becomes almost involuntary. So do it again and do it again and do it again.
It's about not
It's
boiling
not
the
about
ocean, but actually looking at something very simple, picking it up and running with it.
very simple. Pick up something very simple, and it's also about not overthinking. Make it so simple for yourself that these are no-brainers. This is not where you need to be making decisions, right? So if I've taken a bag out, can I put the bag in? Things like that.
In fact, it reminds me of one more instance. So every time we love to drive out, and we love to travel and take our car everywhere we go. So what we realized is that every time we would travel, there would be this, there would be the fruit peels and this, that, and everything in our car. And then we would be looking for something, to put that. And then either we'll throw it outside when we stop somewhere, or else, we would just hang on to it or find some alternative to keep it. So what we did is that, one day we just decided, okay, today we're just going to go and pick up a garbage bin for our car. So we got a nice foldable, reusable garbage bin, and which is always there in our car. So we don't have to think about it anymore. So it's kind of, by not, having to think about it every time we step into the car and we go for long drives, we're also kind of releasing a lot of mental space,
Yes.
making space for other stuff to happen. And it's just there in the car every time. So every time we get off, wherever, we just empty it and we put it back in the car, and that's about it. And we don't have to do much about it. So
How lovely. And it's so simple.
Yeah, it's very simple. And looking at us, a few of other friends have also invested in, car garbage bins. So instead of carrying a bag every time or a plastic packet, which is a complete no-no, we just invested in one.
So I love what you shared, Anu, and I like to say to everybody, think of yourself as if you are the consumer and you're the one selling to yourself. Look at what those companies do. They make things really convenient. So you make the journey convenient for yourself, just like you did by just keeping the bin there. You make it attractive. That's a nice looking bin. I've seen it, right? So you do everything that media does to you. They program you to behave in a certain way. Why can't we work with our minds and program ourselves to behave in the way we want to behave? And the mind is constantly gathering clutter from media and from everywhere. Why can't we instead utilize the power of the mind to create habits which help us live the life that we want to live? Environment, like you want to drink more water, make sure water is placed everywhere around you. You're going to land up drinking more water. So another good tip would be decide the time and place. When you want to do something, decide the time and place. So many people say, I want to buy organic supplies, but they never land up doing it. So if I say something like, I want to buy organic dals and vegetables and this and that, that's a very vague statement. The mind is not going to prioritize it at all. You got to understand the science of the mind. Instead, if I say something as simple as, tomorrow at 5 o'clock, I'm going to go to the organic shop. Now, the mind understands that and it follows that. It's as simple as that. So that would be a very important tip from me, that decide the time, decide the place, make it easy for yourself. Don't make it difficult.
Make a commitment to yourself as well.
Yes.
With that.
Yes.
So essentially keep it simple and articulate it very well to your mind as to what needs to be done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So do we have any questions from anyone who's joined us? Okay. I think we don't have
I want to add on one more tip, Anu, which I was saving for later, which is to surround yourself with people for whom this is normal. Okay? Whatever you start defining as the normal of your life, it starts becoming easier and easier. You do it with ease. It's not a special effort anymore. It's not an exception anymore. It's not one of those handloom kind of people anymore. It's anybody and everybody. So surround yourself.
I'm so glad that you're bringing it up, because this is one of the things that we discussed even in the last 3 ideas that we talked about when it comes to sustainable living. So inspire, influence, join communities, and get the kids involved as well.
Yes.
So and I think it makes so much sense, right? When we talk about habits, then we want habits to form mostly so that we can emulate, at least as parents, we can emulate those habits and the children can pick them up as well. So I think there's another reason for us to pick up certain habits.
Absolutely. Children don't follow what we tell them. Children observe us and then they follow what we are doing. So better than, really lecturing them and giving them those downloads, Just be a role model and they'll just follow things. And they're a lot of fun, by the way. We make sustainability a very grim thing. Kids are so much fun. They're so playful with it. So in fact, we could borrow some of that playfulness.
That's true. We have another question, Vidisha, which is, what are the exercises for stable mind?
Interesting. That comes from Anoop. Okay.
Yeah.
Anoop, yeah, I'm glad you asked this question because we only think of exercises for the body. I love that the way you've connected the word exercises with stable mind, because indeed it is an exercise and it depends a lot on practice. So one of the practices I highly recommend is mindfulness. And with mindfulness, it is a practice. You build the muscle, literally. And why I love mindfulness is because there's no suppression in this path. You're not trying to force yourself to think positive. You're not trying to do a lot of the very popular things, but you're doing something very, very authentic. So for example, just to tell you one simple exercise, which you could start with today, and then of course find some resources to deepen your practice. But you could start with something as simple as, when you're sitting, live the moment with all your 5 senses, right? So spend a moment listening to every sound that you can hear, without judgment, without calling it good or bad, disturbing or pleasant, without resisting, which means I don't want this sound, I want this sound. None of that. Just registering. Okay, there's the sound of the bird. There's the sound of the traffic. This exercise of just living the moment fully can be such a life-changing experience. It can bring so much calmness. Try it for maybe 5 minutes to start with, and you will find your mind quietening down. The other second exercise I would recommend is to just accept and play attendance with your thoughts. Instead of putting away the thoughts, instead of trying to direct your mind away from the thoughts, allow each thought to come in, and imagine you're a teacher who's just marking the attendance of that student. Let it go. So this thought came, and then you let it go. The next thought came, and then you let it go. And you'll find yourself in a state of mindfulness without even trying to do anything which is drastic. So I hope that answers your question, Anoop.
Okay.
Yeah, and one of the books I recommend is The Power of Now. You can probably look at that as a resource. An ebook is available. So just start reading The Power of Now. You're welcome.
So we have two book recommendations from Vidisha. One is Atomic Habits, and the second is The Power of Now.
Yes.
Okay, Vidisha, I think everyone, if Vidisha is there on Instagram, so you can follow her as Vidisha Kaushal. And for sustainable living, you can follow Swadharini, the handle that you've just joined, or you can also join the Swadharini Sustainable Living Everyday group on Facebook. And also, we will be coming up with many such sessions. The next one is on personal care and how to go about it in the most natural and sustainable manner. So, Vidisha, thank you so much for being here today. And
thank you.
It's always a joy. And everyone, Vidisha is also very, 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 very dear. So we are the inner circle, and she's a very close and dear friend of mine. So it's always a joy. And I hope to see you very soon in person.
Yes. Yes. May the world heal very, very beautifully. May we all prosper and thrive during this time.
Yeah, and so it is. Thank you, everyone, for joining in. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
My pleasure.
Whatever's left. Yeah. Bye-bye. Bye, Vidisha. Bye, everyone.